Hi, and welcome to another edition of Newsmakers. I'm Jerry Roberts. It is Friday, July 15th. We are joined by our all-star panel of top local journalists, Jade Martinez-Pogue of KEYT, Nick Welsh of the Santa Barbara Independent, and parachuting in at any moment will be Josh Molina, international man of mystery. But we start with the big talker story of the week about hit and run Henry. Henry Yang, the 81-year-old chancellor of UCSB, has been involved in kind of a weird, mysterious thing about whether he hit a skateboarder or not. Jade, KYT tweeted out a story that said case closed. Why is it closed?
So the student made the allegation that Chancellor Yang and his wife were the ones driving the car that hit them, the student, and then fled. And the CHP looked into it. I got a copy of the CHP report. It said that the student positively identified Chancellor Yang from a lineup, but the officer—
A photo lineup.
Photo lineup, yeah.
Yeah, I was fooled by that at first. Henry was.
But the officer went to the Yang residence and they checked both of the cars. There was no damage, no dents, no fingerprints, no paint scratches, or anything that would have indicated that one of those cars had hit someone. And when they talked to the student again, the student was unsure which of the cars hit him. He said the way he described the car originally wasn't exactly what the chancellor's cars were. And then when they asked him which of the cars was it, he was like, I'm unsure, but I think it was probably this one. And so the CHP decided, since there wasn't really any evidence, there wasn't any other witnesses, no camera footage from the area, to just stop. There wasn't enough to keep investigating, and there definitely wasn't enough to press any charges.
Yeah, but Nick, the chancellor did lawyer up and declined to talk to law enforcement. What does that tell you?
You know, I think if the case is closed, I think it is the successive number of non-denials and denials that we have gotten over time pretty much are an admission that something happened. We got a tip-off early on in May. The event happened on May 16th. We got a tip-off, and we began calling UCSB. And is there a denial, or what UCSB would tell us at that early stage, before we had a copy of any report, was that they could only confirm that there was an investigation ongoing. I then said, well, are you saying that you didn't? I mean, if you didn't hit somebody, you would know. If you did hit somebody, you would know. It's the sort of thing you don't not know.
It's the dog not barking. The dog not barking. Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah, and so the fact that Chancellor Yang did not reply and definitively one way or the other was really striking. And even after the LA Times got a hold of the report that was issued on July 1st, and they contacted Yang, first he refused to talk with CHP. That is, he lawyered up, as you say. When his wife was interviewed by CHP and asked where was Henry that day, and she said, oh, he'd just been driving all around. He's had lots of things to do. And then when the officer said, yes, but we heard you were in the car with him, she said, well, I don't want to talk about this anymore. So, the cumulative weight of all of this is pretty one-sided. And then there is, of course, one of the great non-denial quotes of all time that the LA Times had, and I'm quoting, the Chancellor Yang, quote, wants to respect the skateboarder's report of what the skateboarder believed occurred. I mean, that is like so not diabolically, but so
gaslighting. That's what we call gaslighting.
Yes. And then he said, but and we have, even though we're not saying we did anything, the university is making its resources available to the guy. Now, the guy himself, we called up Tyler Hayden and called and interviewed. And he declined to talk to Tyler. He's a 19-year-old bodybuilder. And if you look at his Facebook page, he's a pretty buff dude. I suspect in the great scheme of things for him, it's pretty much a no harm, no foul. He got a little bit of an abrasion on one of his hips. He got, his big toe got a little bit hurt, but he was going across the street and he thought the Yangs were going to stop.
Which any vehicle would be required to.
Which they would be required to. And when he saw they didn't, he sort of leapt in the air and his butt landed on the car. So presumably it would have a butt smudge, which is a well-known forensic index. And then he rolled off, and in the process of it, he recognizes Chancellor Yang and he recognizes his wife. They're everywhere on campus. You can't not know who they are. And in his report, he claims that the chancellor's wife kind of waved him off, like, get out of the way. And the car just kept on. It is interesting, I would say, not just the university's lack of response on this, but the UCSB Police Department's response, because we had been calling them.
Oh, yeah.
Early on, I think I put somewhere like 6 phone calls into them. I didn't get one response. Genial, another reporter here, put in more than that, got no response. Finally,
this is on the fatal, the 3 people who died.
No, this is on this one.
This is on Henry. Oh, okay.
This is on Henry. Then Tyler Hayden, I think, got the same response. And at some point they said it was the CHP. I know early on when I was talking to the CHP, I was talking to one of their public information officers, couldn't have been more helpful. He said, we went out and investigated. There were no smudge marks. There was no evidence that an accident had occurred. And he said, here, let me pull up the report. And he starts making the clicky-clack sounds of somebody trying to pull up a report. And oh, that's strange. The report's not here. So the whole thing just was a little bit fishy. And when you think about it, again, it's pretty sad, because here's Henry Yang, who is by any measure a transformative chancellor for UCSB. And to have this.
Let me ask, Jay, did you guys have difficulty getting information out of the university on this?
Yeah, well, so actually, we had seen Tyler's article, and then I think I even saw it in the Nexus at some point.
I think the
I
Nexus
didn't
had
try
it first, didn't they? The Nexus had it first.
Yeah, but I didn't do anything with it until the LA Times article came out, when I had to start calling around. I got the blanket written statement. I asked for what they sent to the LA Times from UCSB. That's what we got. I did have trouble getting the CHP report, though. It took me like a day, and the public information officer, I guess, was supposed to be on vacation. So the person I talked to originally wasn't a public information officer. And he told me to check with the UC about the police report. And then I had to call up Sacramento CHP to try and actually get the police report. And so I got it like hours later. But I think by the time that I tried to reach out to UCSB, they kind of had already made up their,
Yeah, this is our story and we're sticking to it. Nick, I didn't mean to interrupt you. You're talking about Henry as a transformative chancellor, which indeed he was, attracting all those Nobel Prize winners and really making UCSB, I think, a great center for hard science.
No, you can't ride a bike. You can't ride your bike at UCSB without running into a Nobel Prize winner.
Yeah, yeah. And Josh Molina has now joined us. Josh, we're going to close on the Henry hit and run Henry story. But I ask you, as a student of news, will this incident be in the lead of the chancellor's obit?
Well, I think if we're able to, or if, the reporters working on the story are able to confirm that he actually did do this and that the university is offering him favorable treatment by covering it up, then that's terrible. So yeah, it would be. I think there's probably more reporting to come out of this. I mean, I think that Tyler Hayden did a good job putting it in his column to get that news out there. And then a couple of weeks later, the LA Times and other publications jumped on it. And so now it's a thing. And like, that's exactly why we exist. That's exactly what we need to do. And it's journalism. Sometimes you have to do it incrementally. You can't do it all in one shot, especially when you're dealing with a powerful organization like UCSB. So I don't know where it's headed, but I do know conversationally, whether it's in the lead of that story or not, it's something people have been, and will continue to talk about.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, you think of Henry out there on the street the night of the David Adius thing. Really a great moment, I think, for him to be out there representing the university of this horrible tragedy. But you wonder how much this is going to stick.
But it comes at a bad time. Obviously, you've got the Dormzilla issue sort of blowing up, and you can't help but wonder if the story got leaked in the first place by people who are upset about Dormzilla. It is the mega dorm that will have 5,000 students. It is causing a lot of consternation and concern.
And the guy is 81. I mean, he's the longest serving chancellor by far, I believe, not only at UCSB, but I think in the system. And, when I left in 2010, there was a lot of grumbling from underlings of his about it was time to hang it up. So we'll see. All right, let's move on. Nick, I missed a meeting, I guess. Environmentalists used to be unanimously against nuclear power. Now Governor Gavin Newsom, who styles himself as an environmentalist, is trying to recommission the decommissioned Diablo Canyon nuclear plant. Why?
Well, it's a really interesting conundrum. Would you rather be eaten alive by a lion or a tiger? In this case, do you worry more about climate change right here, right now, or do you worry about the long-term burial of a nuclear power plant that probably won't melt down up there by Avila Beach or any sort of catastrophic Fukushima type incident, because it hasn't? But pick your poison. And Diablo Canyon was slated to shut down. There's 2 reactors there. One was going to be shut down in 2024, the next in 2025. In fact, this Thursday, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission is coming to Avila Beach to hold a hearing. And it will be on the adequacy of the decommissioning report and how they're going to do it. At the same time, there's been this huge push. Dianne Feinstein supported it. Obviously, Gavin Newsom is driving the train and got his foot on the gas. We need Diablo Canyon as a transitional power source. Nuclear energy is carbon free. And Gavin Newsom has seen what's happened to some of his predecessors when there are blackouts and brownouts and interruptions in the energy grid. They don't stay in office long. So he is mindful of that lesson. And there are projected gaps in the energy supply. Right now there are some already. We had some brownouts, I think, in 2020. But when you
so this is on the fast track.
The only way this can happen is if it's on the fast track. This is not a deliberative process, because turning a nuclear power plant from turning it off to on is not a flick of a switch. There's a lot of stuff that has to get done. I hear there's like $700,000 to $800,000, in new parts that would have to be ordered. And you just don't go to Costco and say, let me get those.
Yeah. Jade, would you rather be eaten by a tiger or a lion? Following next metaphor. That's okay. You don't have to. That's a private. I'm being paid
I
to
do
describe.
want to add something to the Diablo Canyon thing. Because I've done a bit of reporting on this, and it is hard because there's two different sides. It's like, pick your poison, like Nick was saying. But what I thought was interesting is that before Gavin Newsom's like legislation with the money for this, when he did an interview with the LA Times saying that he would definitely consider apply for the federal funding that is aimed to keeping nuclear power plants open. But what I thought was interesting is that Gavin is not in the position to apply for that money, because that money is only for the owners and operators of the power plants, which in this case
PG&E,
is
right?
PG&E. Right. And so I've spoken to PG&E, and I think they might be in the process of doing it, but they recently requested an application deadline extension. I think they've gotten 2 extensions now, because it takes time to get that application together. But that federal funding is Gavin Newsom, like that's not his. That's not his.
That's so interesting, because that's classic Gavin. You come up with some big flashy thing, bold, bright, beautiful, and have a press conference and talk about how you're transforming the world, and then move on to the next shiny, bright object. So, all right, we'll watch this.
Okay,
one.
but just to stand up for Gavin. I mean, not that he needs anybody helping him, but in his reckless way, reckless and opportunistic, he did sort of spearhead what is now gay marriage, legalized gay marriage. He made that happen a lot faster than it otherwise would have happened.
Yeah, and there were many Democrats who blamed that for the defeat of John Kerry in the 2004 election, because, as you recall, then the Republicans put a bunch of gay marriage things on the ballot in key states. Anyway, all right, Josh, speaking of things being canceled, Ed St. George, when last we heard of him, was on your podcast making all kinds of strange noises about Megan Harmon, your favorite council member. But now he's back in Santa Barbara, at least to the extent of trying to get his little hotel approved down there, where on Montecito Street. But he really got blasted this week. What happened?
Yeah, so this was at the ABR, I guess, ABR last week. And it was, if you know this corner, it's right by Santa Barbara City College. It's across from 7-Eleven, and there's a Chevron and a little liquor market, wine market. And then there's this big pile of weeds, patch of weeds, fenced. And he wants to build a hotel annex to the hotel that he's already been approved to build up the block over by Rudy's. And it is kind of like trying to cram a whole too much into too small of a spot. It's big and the architecture looks a little funky. I mean, that spot is not that big. And so he's trying to build 8 hotels and the parking and have its own sort of like separate entrance into these hotel rooms. And the design was basically just panned by everybody. They said that it's unnecessary, it's ornate, this design, it's not functional, I don't see where the entrance is, and they just did not like it. And so I got to say that it's a weird spot to have a hotel. There's a lot of our friends in the community who loiter in that area. And I think that maybe there's the assumption they'll be gentrified out of the area and they'll move on. But as long as there's the 7-Eleven and the liquor store there, they're going to be there. And
so does he have approval? Does he have a permit to build something there, a hotel like structure?
So he's got approval to build a hotel at the it's like 318 West Montecito Street. That's already done. They gave him approval. It's ready for him to move ahead. The annex, the little spot on the corner, that's a new process, and he's just sort of pitching it as being part of the other hotel. Honestly, it should be something else, or very small little hotel, because it's like the parking and it's just.
And the design of it, I mean, it's a 9-room hotel with parking. And the design of it is very much Fortress Santa Barbara, because I think just what you mentioned, Josh, that you have a lot of people hanging out and drinking and whatever. And he does not want those people in his hotel guest space. So he has this big wall that is 6 feet high that sort of wraps around the front of it. So, and that was what some of the commissioners objected to. And then the other is that the driveway and the parking lot is also this huge, massive getaway wall. And one of the commissioners, Ed Lenbeck, who's probably been around longer than anybody and does not have to hold his tongue, said this is the most pedestrian, unfriendly structure anywhere in town, except for maybe the Bank of America building on State Street.
Who's the architect?
You know, I don't remember.
name was
I don't
Noah
think it's
Greer.
somebody local.
No.
What'd you say?
I think his name was Noah Greer, and I'm not familiar with
He's
him.
not local.
Not one
think
of the
it-
regular ones.
I think what Ed does, he's learned over time that whatever he does initially isn't going to get approved. So you don't spend a lot of time up front working out the details. You just throw it up and see who shoots it to smithereens, and then reconfigure later. So I don't think they bothered really working out a lot of the key details. They knew they were going to get clobbered. Let's do that and get it out of the way, and then move from there.
Is it, Jade, is this a story for KYT or is it too micro local?
We have gotten some calls about it and some emails in which I forwarded to John Palmentary. But it's
Pretty local.
kind of not typically what we'd cover, I think, until something actually
And
happens.
no good pictures either. No good.
Okay, but
Yeah.
there's a big weed patch, and everybody drives by that and goes, "What the heck is happening here? Why is this a weed patch?" But really, what we both missed, Josh and I, this is yet another entrance to Santa Barbara's story. And anytime you can pitch a story as this is the entrance to Santa Barbara, no matter how obscure it is, you can run with it.
Yeah, it's right past the Castillo underpass there.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
I've got to head
Elsewhere.
out, guys.
All right, hey, thanks, Jade.
Bye.
Thanks for dropping in and
Thank you.
stay safe, okay? Okay, elsewhere on the development front, we have the so-called SOMO south of Montecito Street. Oh, boy. A big development in the funk zone is coming up for a hearing, Josh. I think you reported on that first. What is the development? They're trying to get a development agreement with the city, yes?
Yeah, this thing's never gonna get built. I'll just say, not in this current form. It's 60 feet. It's 155 units, or wait, am I?
Yeah,
exactly?
155 is what,
Yeah.
yeah.
I gotta look at my 155. Wow. Okay, and it's they want to kind of like take over this whole block in the funk zone. There's already no place to park in the.
Is
funk
it
zone.
mixed use?
Yeah, and they want to have mixed use, some sort of market office space as well. The property owners in the area are not in support of this project. I don't know if it's like every one of them, but some of them are not in support. It's very tall, it's very big. You talk about Ed, or Nick, you talk about Ed just sort of like throwing stuff up and working backwards. I have to believe that's what this project is, because there is no way on God's green earth that the ABR is going to approve this or give their support to it. And in fact, it's been delayed twice now. When I wrote about it in June, it was supposed to be on the agenda. And then this week it was supposed to be on the agenda, and it got put off. It got continued. So there's something going on. It's not going to happen. I mean, they want a development agreement, which is what Ed St. George got. By the way, it's also what Cottage Health got. Okay. You generally give development agreements for these massive big projects.
And the Native American Health thing too, right? Got a development agreement.
Yeah, the American Indian Health Services Clinic, because there's some community benefit to doing that. And so we're going to work with you on what is going to be approved here. We're going to get something out of it. You're going to get something out of it. So I guess they want a housing development agreement to say, hey, we're building housing and we need housing. Well, this council, we love housing, but no, this
one has, I think, 38, if I remember correctly, affordable units, or below market is probably a better term.
Yeah.
And I think that that is above and beyond what they would be required to do. So it's a little bit like Ed St. George over on Milpa Street, where he threw in more affordable units than he was required to get the big density bonus. But this is the revenge of Neil de Paola. Neil, as many people might remember, back in 2014, I think it was, proposed another big project down here, but it was very whimsical and arty and not so massive and overwrought. And they had sailboats on the top of one building.
Didn't they have like ship containers? People were
They
going
had
to
ship
live.
containers where artists could go and be artists for a while. They had some airstreams, and it was sort of a really lively, fun, playful hodgepodge. And this one here just looks fortress, boom, and it's just a big old block. And I'm sure.
But how can they turn down 155 units of housing? I mean, that's all
They may have a hard time
talking about, especially if there's a lot of affordable in there.
The real question I have, and I don't know the answer, but Neil is very shrewd at figuring out if he puts certain things on the table in terms of housing, the city's discretionary review will be vastly diminished, and they will have very little that they can say about it because it is housing. And there's all those bills in Sacramento that say, if you say housing, that's the magic word and you get a free pass. Well, Neil knows about those inside and out. And he's a little bit, I haven't talked with Neil in a long time, but when his other project got shot down, or his previous one, he was more than a little bent out of shape about it. He thought the city didn't try to work with them. They were sticks in the mud. They were prigs. They were
Oh,
prudes.
and it got completely trashed. I remember Mayor Lodge's head exploding about that one. Unless,
And
Josh,
he kind of left town in disgust. He said, "Hell, I don't need this," and now he's back.
yeah. Josh, who's with Mayor Murillo gone? Who's the biggest housing advocate on the city council, would you say? Megan?
You're going to ask me that softball question? That's Council Member Megan Harmon, of course. Yes.
Yeah. So do we know what she thinks of this?
No, when I wrote about it, I did sort of a preview, thinking there'd be robust discussion at the ABR, and that never happened. So I haven't really talked to the council members yet about what they think. I mean, I think something will get built there, but I think we're still a town that really balances design with the need for housing, and the funk zone is already so jam-packed.
So
It's
dense,
ridiculous.
But there are those mandates from Sacramento.
Yeah.
Keep in mind. Hey, Nick, you had an interesting piece about the jail. There's a new study about what the jail population should be as Goss and Greg and Joan pursue the white whale of letting everybody out of jail.
Okay, the holy grail for people for a long time has been, how do we keep fewer people in the county jail? And this is done for reasons of safety, security, cost cutting, and justice. And for many, many years, the jail was 1,200 people. Boom. Then at the sort of the end of the last century, it was 1,000. That was a lot of work. During the height or the depths of COVID, because of all of the health considerations, jail population dropped to 600. And we didn't have at that time yet a big rise in violent or property crime. So that it was like a eureka moment. a lot of the supervisors were saying, look, we can have almost half as many people into jail without having a crime problem. So that was it, and everybody was excited. Bill Brown showed up, dropped the mic on him, said, you're drinking Kool-Aid that's been spiked with, fool's gold. You can't get there from here. So they hired this guy. It's part of a year-long examination of the criminal justice system. They hired this guy who's an economist and a consultant, and he looked at 500,000 jail booking reports. He looked at 50,000 probation reports. He looked at crime stats, crime trends, demographic trends, probation trends, who's behind bars, aging trends, all this kind of stuff. And he said, you know what? If everything stays the same and you don't do anything, it can hover along safely at 800 inmates. Right now, we have a capacity for 1,034.
But that would require a lot of new
No,
programs and
Without
diversion.
any change of programs, we can hover at 800. But if we make 5 changes, we can get down to 600. And 600, the benefit of 600 is theoretically it costs a lot less in terms of how many people you have to hire to staff a jail.
But the sheriff says that's not true.
The sheriff got up, and I would say the sheriff, and last time this came up, the sheriff tried to blow everybody away with scary statistics, like if you do what you think you want to do, the rapists and murderers are going to be running freely in the streets. This time around, he was much more measured in his caution. And this time he said, if you think you're going to save a bunch of money, you're not, because in order to put these people who aren't in jail, who could be in jail, in diversion programs and the like, you're going to have to spend a lot more money. The other thing he said is that, in any jail, however you size it, it has to have a cushion, because you have a lot of people going into jails who want to kill each other. And so you have to have like a 15% cushion. But the
Kind
real
of like
question,
this show.
unlike this show, but the real question is, the South County Jail, the one that's, the old one, is a complete mess. And massive work needs to be done on it to figure out how much, to make it a safe operating place and up to code. And the question is, how many beds do we need down here? And so this number could have profound implications for how big.
All right, I'm gonna head out. Sorry.
Oh, well. Yeah, hey, I wanted to ask him about Earl Warren Showground. All right, hey, listen, speaking of law enforcement, today is Barney Melekian's last day as interim police chief. And I had the expectation that when he left, there was going to be a new police chief, but now, according to this press release, we have a new interim police chief.
So we've gone from an interim chief to an interim chief, and Barney Melekian, I think he took over in March of 2021, after Lori Lunow stepped down. And Barney has extended his interim status a couple of times now, because the first time they went out and recruited for a new chief, they got really inadequate responses. They didn't get any strong contenders, so they had to go out and do the whole process over again. The second time, I am told they've got 3 really good contenders, and they have one that they are really settled on. I'm told it is a woman, but there's one they really want, but they're still hammering out the details. And Barney,
Have they offered it? Is there?
Again, what I know and what I think I know are 2 different things. I think they have offered it, but they have to work out the details, and they haven't nailed it down, and I don't know what's hanging it up. But Barney's got to go. He's stayed way longer than he thought, and he's been in law enforcement 50 years. And at a certain point,
But he's not leaving Santa Barbara.
He's not leaving Santa Barbara, and he's indicated he wants to be involved in the public discussion about law enforcement and law enforcement reforms. He isn't going anywhere, but
Yeah.
he
Well,
doesn't want to be chief.
how much, the whole civilian review thing kind of ended with a bang, not a whimper. It was very messy, and we've talked about it on the show. How much of that do you think is contributing to him leaving before there is a permanent chief?
You know what, to be honest, I don't think any. I think he was going to go anyway, but I think that made him feel maybe a little bit better about it, but I don't think it altered his decision, at least in the conversations I've had. It was a really unfortunate ending where at the end of a council meeting about it, there was a exchange between Barney and Gabe Escobedo, who was the chair of the Formation Commission. And in it, Barney was going to say something and then thought better of it. And Gabe said, no, I want to hear what you got to say. And Barney was really mad at him. It had been a intense meeting. A lot of names, a lot of allegations have been made. And Barney said, you don't get to call me a liar. And Gabe said, I didn't call you a liar. And Barney said, we're done. And the allegation is that when Barney said we're done, he did something like that. Barney has made it clear he didn't do this, that is not what happened. He did send a letter to the council members saying he should have kept his mouth shut and shouldn't have said anything. He sent a letter to the troops saying, I told you not to speak when you're hot, and I didn't listen to my own words. The problem is that you have two other members of the Formation Commission who watched it. They have walked away, upset. They were very, it was an intense exchange, whatever it is happened. Everybody felt intense, and there's different accounts of what happened. I haven't followed up. I know that those members are supposed to be contacted by its city administrators to get their view of what happened. I don't know if that has happened yet, and there was some concerns that it was taking a little too long.
So what's the next step for this? The
next step is sometime in September, or a proposal is going to be coming back for an ordinance
from the staff.
Well, it's from the staff, but it's also supposed to involve the stakeholders, and the stakeholders would clearly involve people from the Formation Commission. And it's one thing to come up with an idea, which they've come up with. It's another thing to actually come up with the ordinance, and that will require a lot of public participation.
What year do you recall it was that it became mandatory for us to use the word stakeholders a lot?
I think it goes back to 1989.
I was thinking it was a little earlier, 1977, but well, Josh, I just saw this message. Sorry, guys, I've had a sudden thing come out and I got to go. Leaving at 2:05. I missed that, so I would have asked him about Earl Warren. So we'll ask him about Earl Warren next time. All right, man. What do you got going? Anything?
Too much.
Yeah. All right. Don't want to talk about it. Okay. Well, just a reminder that we are in the red zone for COVID infections, 10% increase in the last week, 57 people hospitalized. This is true for all of California. LA County is about to reinstate a mask mandate for indoors. So, the vaccines don't keep you from getting it, but they sure make it easier if you do get it, I am told. So plenty of opportunity to still get a vaccine. And Nick, I know you were thrilled as I was by our deepest and sharpest glimpse into the early universe because of the James Webb Space Telescope this week. Did you see any of those pictures?
I saw some of those pictures. They're kind of mind-blowing.
Yeah.
And when you think about the scale of time that they sort of, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of billions of years it took the light to get to the telescope, and the fact that we can see it. I mean, I just, my ignorance of the universe is almost as vast as the universe itself. And, you look at those photos and it really it just makes you go, wow.
Yeah, it was pretty extraordinary. It sort of almost put Trump in perspective, but not quite. All right, they're dropping like flies here on Newsmakers.
Jerry,
like a hardcore-
okay, here's the deal, Jerry. The next show, you're gonna wind up interviewing yourself. You're gonna have to move from one screen to the next.
Me and Thomas Jefferson. All
And you're
right,
gonna have different backgrounds.
thanks. We'll see you next time on Newsmakers.
All right, see ya.